So imagine conquering a multi-million-dollar national industry, like single-handedly altering its economics,
Right.
becoming an international crossover icon, and this is the crazy part, permanently retiring at the age of 23.
Yeah, it's completely unheard of.
It really is. Because, usually we expect professional growth to be this, like, marathon. You start at the bottom, you grind for decades, and eventually maybe you leave a mark.
Exactly. A slow burn.
Right. But every once in a while, you encounter someone who treats their entire career like a blindingly fast sprint.
It's basically the professional equivalent of a supernova,
Yeah.
just unignorable, totally industry altering, and incredibly brief by design.
By design. That's the key.
Yeah. When you look at the mechanics of a career like that, you realize pretty quickly that it doesn't happen by accident. It requires this hyper-calculated understanding of business, of branding, and above all, timing.
Which brings us to our subject for today's deep dive. We are looking at a truly unique, just meteoric career arc within a highly controversial and complex corner of the Japanese media landscape.
A very specific era, too.
Right. We are unpacking the story of Anna Ohura. She was a wildly popular model and actress who became an absolute superstar in the Japanese mature entertainment industry in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, she left it all behind when most people her age were, just finishing college.
And our mission today is to figure out exactly how she managed to do that.
Yes.
We've been poring over the stack of contemporary interviews, industry economic retrospectives, and pop culture critiques to really unpack the fascinating business structures of this specific industry.
It's complicated.
It is, yeah. We are going to look closely at the rigid divide between corporate studios and independent studios in Japan at the time, and then examine how Ohura successfully navigated that whole landscape to build an international brand and ultimately force a transition into mainstream media.
Right, because if you're listening to this, you're probably wondering how someone enters a highly stigmatized field, known for burning people out, completely masters it, stimulates the national industry economy, and then entirely reinvents themselves in, what was it?
Roughly 3 years.
Roughly 3 years. It's just wild.
It really is.
But to understand that timeline, we actually have to step back from the massive fame. We need to look at her beginnings. Because before she was this untouchable brand, her early life was remarkably normal.
Yeah, almost aggressively grounded.
Totally.
To understand the persona that eventually conquered this industry, you really have to look at that psychological foundation. So she was born on May 30th, 1980 in Hokkaido, Japan.
Which is pretty far removed from Tokyo.
Geographically and culturally, yes. Very removed from the relentless media machine of Tokyo. And she has a mixed heritage, a French father, whom she reportedly resembles, and a Japanese mother.
Okay.
So this gave her a very distinct physical profile early on, but her day-to-day life was as typical as you could possibly get.
Yeah, looking at the contemporary interviews, they highlight these wonderfully mundane personal quirks, like she's left-handed, she has poor eyesight, and has to wear contacts.
The context thing is great.
Right. And she loves udon noodles, but actively dislikes soba.
She had strong opinions on noodles.
She did. She enjoys a drink, smokes occasionally, and carried a profound, deep respect for her grandmother. Just very human details.
And academically, she was very much a standard student, with clear, definitive strengths and weaknesses. She excelled at social studies and Japanese literature, but she struggled heavily with math and English.
Which is fascinating when you consider her original childhood ambition. Because she didn't want to be an actress.
No.
She didn't want to be a model. She desperately wanted to be a comic book writer, or at least an assistant to one.
Right.
She spent her free time participating in school plays, devouring movies, and just studying how stories are constructed. It's like the origin story of a comic book character.
Yeah.
She was just this quiet, creative kid drawing stories in Hokkaido, entirely unaware of the plot twist coming her way.
Well, and that is the most crucial detail of her early life, I think. She had a creator's mindset.
Interesting.
Even if she didn't realize it, yeah, she was observing narratives and understanding how characters are built and, consumed by an audience.
But rather than writing characters on a page, she ended up applying those exact narrative skills to herself.
Exactly.
Because if you think about the mature entertainment industry, it's a sector entirely built on manufacturing fantasy. Like everything is elevated, glossy, and intentionally detached from reality to sell an illusion.
Right, and that is why those grounded, relatable traits mattered so much for her business model later on.
How so?
Well, when you are operating in a sea of manufactured fantasy, perfection actually becomes kind of boring.
Oh, I see.
By allowing these very real, humanizing details to remain attached to her public profile, the fact that she needed contacts to see the camera or had strong opinions on noodle types, her audience connected with her on a completely different level.
It created an anchor of authenticity.
Exactly. She wasn't just an untouchable image on a screen. She felt like a real person navigating a hyper-real environment.
Okay, so she has this grounded, creative foundation in Hokkaido. But then, at age 19, her trajectory drastically alters. Like, she shifts from being a quiet creative to being thrust right into the center of a massive, highly structured corporate machine.
Yeah, the plot twist. She was scouted on the street, which officially marked her entry into the mature entertainment industry.
Just off the street.
Yep. And she debuted very shortly after, on February 24, 2000, with a film titled Delicious Juicy Fruit under a major label called Venus.
And this brings us to the actual business mechanics of the Japanese mature media landscape at the time, which, honestly, are incredibly complex.
Very much so.
The industry was strictly divided into two distinct tiers, and Ohura started her career in what was known as the pro system.
Right. So the pro companies operated under a massive corporate umbrella. They were regulated by an organization known as the Japan Software Morality Association,
Okay.
which was commonly referred to as SOFRAN.
Okay, I have to pause here. I have to ask for some serious clarification.
I thought you might.
Because having a morality association regulating films designed specifically for a mature audience sounds like a complete oxymoron.
It does.
What was this organization actually doing? Like, did the sovereign system exist to protect the performers? Or was it just a corporate tool designed to mass-produce safe, formulaic content that wouldn't attract legal scrutiny?
It was overwhelmingly the latter. It was a corporate mechanism designed for risk mitigation.
Just protecting the bottom line.
Exactly. The mechanics of the pro system under Sofrin were all about standardizing the product. They had strict censorship guidelines, very specific mandates on what could and couldn't be shown, and even rules dictating the pacing and style of the films.
Wow.
But for a newcomer like Ohura, the pro system offered a much safer, highly predictable entry point. You were handed guaranteed distribution, professional lighting, strict set schedules, and a massive marketing apparatus.
So it was the ultimate corporate safety net. You punch in, you do the job according to the manual, and you get paid.
Right. Which is great for financial stability, but terrible for art.
Yeah, I imagine.
Because the companies had to adhere to the association's rigid guidelines, the films were widely criticized as being incredibly vanilla. The system prioritized volume and safe financial returns over any kind of innovation.
Just churning them out.
Literally churning them out. Directors weren't trying to create compelling media. They were quite literally hitting marks on a corporate checklist to ensure the film wouldn't get flagged.
Okay, so put yourself in Ohura's shoes. You are a performer inside this rigid, highly structured pro system.
Right.
You are surrounded by thousands of other actresses, all being run through the exact same safe, formulaic corporate machine. If the entire system is designed for uniformity, how on earth do you build a brand that stands out?
And that right there was the existential challenge of the pro system. And Ohura solved it through a brilliant, highly calculated contrast.
Okay.
She leveraged a massive disconnect between her physical marketing and her actual on-screen performance style.
Because the corporate studios were producing vanilla content, they had to find external ways to differentiate their talent, just to get viewers in the door.
Exactly.
For Ohura, that meant leaning heavily into physical marketing. She possessed a highly distinctive physical profile specifically, her famous 100-centimeter, or metric eye cup, natural figure.
Yeah.
The studios used this as the absolute tip of the spear for her branding. I mean, in a 2003 interview with the Taipei Times, she was explicitly promoted as having the largest measurements in the entire industry.
Though it's crucial to point out that industry retrospectives note this was largely a promotional claim driven by the studio executives.
Golly.
Yeah, it was a marketing hook. By all accounts, she herself was known for being quite humble and grounded about it. But from a business perspective, the studio needed a loud, undeniable billboard, and that physical marketing was it.
But the brilliance is what happens after the viewer is pulled in by that loud marketing. You expect the performance to match that intense, over-the-top physical branding, but instead she delivered the complete opposite.
And this is where we see that childhood creator's mindset come back into play.
Right.
She understood the power of subverting expectations. She adopted what critics and fans celebrated as a highly traditional Japanese performance style. She was incredibly demure, highly disciplined, and projected a quiet, almost theatrical shyness on camera.
And she maintained this quiet composure even when she was thrown into highly specialized, chaotic scenes.
Yes, she did.
Like she did significant work with the TMA label, which involved incredibly demanding physical shoots. We're talking about avant-garde ensemble scenes, wearing aerobic costumes, and executing complex, on-location athletic themes.
Which created an undeniable magnetism. Think about the visual tension there.
Yeah.
In the middle of these chaotic, highly specialized, heavily produced scenarios, she is performing with this quiet, submissive reserve. The contrast between the extreme environment she was placed in and her disciplined restraint made her utterly unique in the market.
It's like taking a classically trained, highly disciplined Shakespearean theater actor and dropping them into the middle of a loud, chaotic, explosion-filled summer blockbuster movie.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, no matter how extreme or wild the special effects get around them, they just maintain this quiet, trained composure. It automatically elevates the entire production because it feels so unexpected and out of place.
And that contrast was the engine of her brand. And it resulted in massive crossover appeal. She wasn't just famous within her specific niche anymore, she began to transcend her demographic.
Oh, definitely.
A perfect example of this is her appearance at an international furniture exposition in Taipei in 2003.
Wait, a furniture expo?
Exactly.
Like couches and tables?
Yes. She was invited as a mainstream promotional draw to an event that had absolutely nothing to do with adult media or mature entertainment.
That is wild.
They wanted her there simply because her brand had become that recognizable across Asia. She was pulling mainstream crowds. If you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out.
So by this point, she has completely mastered the corporate pro system. She used their massive distribution network, she built an international brand through her contrasting performance style, and she now holds immense leverage.
Immense leverage.
Then what does she do with it? She decides to leave the safety net.
Yeah. She executes a highly calculated pivot toward more boundary-pushing artistic collaborations, moving entirely outside of the sovereign corporate umbrella.
She enters the indie scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first major step into this new territory happened in 2002. She began collaborating with a critically acclaimed photographer named Haruki Yukimura.
Okay.
And they started working on thematic photography, specifically involving restriction.
So she is moving away from the safe, vanilla corporate checklists and stepping into much more specialized avant-garde territory.
Exactly. And this artistic partnership was wildly successful. It proved that her audience would follow her into more complex themes,
Right.
which led them to produce cinematic releases together for mature audiences, including a notable film called Secret Feelings in 2003, and later a project called Big Tits Restrict in 2005.
And this wasn't just a temporary detour for her. She eventually formalized her transition by moving to the indie label known as Wants Factory, making her debut there with a release titled Super Angle of a Pay.
Yep.
And when you look at the pop culture critiques of the time, the reception was overwhelming. Critics absolutely praised this move.
Because the indie companies operated completely outside of the corporate oversight of Sofrin, the economic model was entirely different.
How so?
Well, without the guaranteed corporate distribution of the pro system, indie studios had to attract viewers through sheer quality and innovation. This meant they attracted much better, more visionary directors.
That makes sense.
They allowed for true creative freedom and gave performers the actual space to genuinely act, rather than just hitting those formulaic corporate marks.
Okay, but I have to challenge this narrative a bit.
Sure.
Did this move to the indie scene actually represent genuine artistic freedom? Or is that just a polite way of saying that in order to survive economically without the financial safety net of the big corporate studios, performers were simply required to participate in even more extreme, highly niche subgenres just to grab attention?
And that is the fundamental tension of independent media in any industry, really. It's a completely valid pushback.
Right.
The risk-reward ratio changes drastically. Without the marketing machine of a massive corporation, you absolutely have to stand out. And sometimes that does mean leaning into shock value.
Exactly.
However, the consensus among industry retrospectives is that Ohura navigated this perfectly. She didn't use the indie scene merely to shock the audience. She used it to genuinely elevate her work creatively.
How exactly did she prove that distinction, though?
Well, by choosing to work with directors like Yukimura who had a specific, established artistic vision. She proved she was a versatile performer, capable of handling complex psychological and thematic material.
Oh, I see.
She proved she wasn't just a corporate marketing gimmick built around a specific physical measurement. She used the lack of soft-rin restrictions to showcase a deeper level of performance art within her genre.
So by moving to the indie scene, she essentially took total control of her own narrative.
Precisely.
Let's synthesize all of this because the timeline is just staggering. She enters a notoriously difficult industry at 19.
Yeah.
She figures out how to master the safe corporate pro system without getting lost in the shuffle. She builds an international brand by combining loud physical marketing with a quiet, disciplined performance style.
And then leverages it.
Right. She leverages that massive fame to pivot into the risky indie world, proving her artistic versatility and winning over the toughest critics. She has systematically conquered every single tier of the industry.
She reached the absolute pinnacle of her profession. She proved everything there was to prove, both commercially and artistically.
And then she makes what I think is the most fascinating, brilliant business move of her entire career.
She walks away.
Completely.
Completely.
She officially retires from the mature entertainment industry at the age of 23. This happens in late 2003. And she doesn't just fade out either.
No, not at all.
She goes out on this massive, highly visible high note. She drops 3 rapid-fire releases right at the end to maximize her exit leverage. Tease, fetish angle, secret feelings, and super angle of opie. Just boom, boom, boom. And then the door closes.
It is a masterclass in the economics of scarcity, you know?
Yeah.
Leave them wanting more at the exact height of your earning power and popularity.
Yeah.
But what makes this exit truly remarkable is that she didn't just disappear into obscurity. She successfully transitioned into mainstream media, which, given the intense cultural stigma often attached to the mature entertainment industry, is incredibly difficult to execute.
Yeah, she started appearing on television. She pursued various independent business ventures, and most notably, she starred in mainstream music videos.
That was a huge deal.
She was featured in a 2003 release for the highly popular Japanese music group B-Dash in a video called Fast Food Bitch.
Oh.
That is a massive cultural leap.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the equivalent of a stigmatized underground actor suddenly appearing on MTV in prime time.
Which fundamentally altered how the industry was perceived. Her legacy in the Japanese media landscape is profound on multiple levels. Economic analysts credit her with providing a massive, positive financial boost to the entire Japanese adult media industry during her tenure.
Wow.
Her crossover appeal brought in international money and mainstream attention that the sector hadn't seen in that specific way before.
But beyond the money, she established a viable, replicable blueprint.
Yes, she did.
She showed young models entering the industry that it didn't have to be a one-way street. She proved it was possible to enter a stigmatized field, maintain your dignity through a highly disciplined performance style, leverage the corporate system for distribution, validate yourself as an artist in the indie system, and then successfully transition out into different tiers of mainstream entertainment.
She proved that the industry didn't have to be a trap.
Right.
It could be a highly effective stepping stone, provided you possess the right mix of personal branding, professional discipline, and acute business acumen. She treated it like a tool, used it to build her empire, and then put the tool down.
We started this deep dive talking about the difference between marathons and sprints in our professional lives. And looking at Anna Ohura's 3-year sprint leaves me with a pretty profound final thought.
What's that?
We spend so much of our time and energy trying to reach the top of the mountain in our respective careers. You know, we read the leadership books, we put in the grueling hours, we navigate the frustrating corporate structures.
The grind.
But if you actually manage to do it, if you completely conquer your industry, achieve international fame, stimulate an entire sector's economy, and reach the absolute pinnacle of your field by the time you are 23 years old,
Yeah.
is the ultimate power move simply choosing to walk away and reinvent yourself on your own terms? Is the greatest measure of success not holding on to the crown as long as possible, but knowing exactly when to take it off?
Wow. That completely reframes how we view ambition. The discipline to leave on top might actually be rarer than the drive it takes to get there in the first place.
Something to think about next time you're evaluating your own career trajectory. Until next time.